Hello, lovely people. I'm Debs. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I'm in the book shack. It's earlier than normal. That's because I'm heading down to see my family this afternoon and we're going to be there for a few days. So I thought I would get my Sunday reading wrap up in early. It's been a great week, but it's been an emotionally charged week. And before we talk about books, I will show you why. Meet Mia. Mia Rebecca. Rebecca after her aunt. My first granddaughter. She was born on Monday in the early hours of the morning at home. Here's another picture of her. They did have to go into hospital where she did end up in ICU for about 24 hours, but was fine. And they returned home on Wednesday, which was my 60th birthday. So we were meant to go down to see the family on Tuesday and stay Wednesday, Thursday. But in view of the fact that my daughter and Mia had just arrived home and she has a 2-year-old son as well, my beautiful grandson, that's Mason. We thought we'd give them a few days peace and quiet. There's Mason meeting Mia. So I can't wait to see them all this afternoon. Consequently, the beginning of the week, my head was all over the place and my reading was really bitty. I've had a bitty week this week. I have finished a few things. Let's start with short stories. I've only read one short story this week, and that was called The Home Crowd Advantage. It's by Ben Aaronovich. I read it for Occult Detective October. It is the first story in this book, Tales from the Folly, and it's a Rivers of London short story collection. Now, anyone who's been here before will know I love the Rivers of London series. I've read one novella, 8 of the novels, but I've never read any short stories. This looks as though it's going to be fun. It's divided into 2 parts. The first part has several stories that feature Peter Grant, who is our hero in the novels. And the second section of stories doesn't feature him. Don't know who it does feature because I haven't got that far yet. But the first story, The Home Crowd Advantage, was great fun. It did feature Peter Grant. It also featured a French wizard, and he had previously been in London in 1948 for the Olympic Games, and this story was set in 2012 for the next London Olympic Games. It was great fun. All these stories are great fun. So when it comes to books, the next book I read, and I hadn't meant to read this, it's just Greg at Ghost Readers in the Sky has been discussing quite a lot Robert Louis Stevenson, and it occurred to me that I had never read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that was my next book for this week. It also features as a golden book because it is a Victorian book. So it ticks the Victober box for me, and it ticks one of the 2 British golden ages of literature, which is the Elizabethan age and the Victorian age. And I'd never read it. And everybody knows the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, but actually reading it, was far more interesting. It was a bit like when I read Frankenstein, which I either did earlier this year or late last year, and I was blown away by it. Even though you think you know the story, reading the real thing is much more interesting. So I enjoyed that. Then I decided to play a game. I couldn't concentrate on anything that I thought I was meant to be reading. So I thought I'd play a little game, and Aaron at Aaron Read a Book, a couple of weeks ago was talking about how addicted he is to buying cheap books, cheap ebooks from things like BookBud. And I am exactly the same. I've got thousands of books on my iPad, either in Kindle, in Google Play, or in Kobo, Apple Books. Anyway, I keep those books listed in most recent order. So the most recent ones I've downloaded are at the top. I decided to have a little play, and I adjusted the order to authors A to Z. And I went down the list. I started off in Google Play, looking at authors I had never read that I had multiple books by. And once I'd gone through all of the apps that I use, I discovered I had 15 books by Anne Cleeves, and I'd never read a single Anne Cleeves book. I thought I would start with this, Raven Black, and this is the first of the books that was filmed as Shetland. And I don't know if other viewers around the world can see the series Shetland, but it is a drama centered around a detective called Jimmy Perez, who is based in the Shetland Isles, far north of Scotland. And I love the series, but I've never read any of the books. And this was great. Absolutely loved it. It was the story of the murder of a young girl who was an incomer to the island, who had been creating a video documenting the island, and she was quite, I suppose antagonistic is possibly too strong a word, but she was so often filming with her camera that people used to forget that she was there, and she used to try and create situations where people would behave badly, and then she'd film them while she was doing it. She's found dead on the beach, and suspicion falls on a older guy who has a limited IQ, who lives in a beaten up old cottage, which used to be his mother's cottage until she died, quite close to where the girl is found. And there's a separate strand of the story which deals with the death of a much younger girl many years beforehand, where suspicion had fallen on this reclusive guy called Magnus. He has very low IQ. The islanders all blamed him for the first death, although he was never charged and nothing was proven. And there is some thought that these murders, or the disappearance, because the body of the first child was never found, might be linked to the murder of the second child. It's full of atmosphere. as indeed is the television programme. It's very rare that I do things this way round. Normally I insist on reading the book before I will watch an adaptation of it. But this is really good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. She also wrote a series of books featuring a detective called Vera, and I can't remember her surname, which was also televised. I've not seen very many of those, but I have got the first book in the Vera series, but she's got lots of other smaller series of books, and purely by coincidence, by luck, I appear to have the first book in several of her series. So I'm going to enjoy going through those because I thought they were really good. I also read one of her novellas called The Girls on the Shore, which features another detective called Matthew Venn, who I believe has a small series of his own. This was brilliant. It wasn't much longer than a short story, to be honest. And having read the first Shetland book, I think I was expecting something different from this. It was surprising and it was very good. Is that all the things that I finished? Yes, so I've only finished those. One short story, two novellas really, because Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde counts as a novella, and then Raven Black, which is the first Anne Cleeves Shetland book. I am, however, also in the middle of several things. So I have the Tales from the Folly, which I'm reading for Occult Detective October. I have also started reading Dirk Gentley's Holistic Detective Agency by Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. And this sprung to mind after I did the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy tag that Gareth from Books, Songs and Other Magic had created. And I'm not very far in, I'm only up to chapter 4, but I am thoroughly enjoying it at the moment. I haven't read any Douglas Adams for ages, and I think the man was just a genius. I am also reading for Victober a book I'd never heard of before by a very famous author. This is Anthony Trollope, and I found this in a second-hand shop. There's 2 novels in here, very short considering it's Trollope, and I've started the first one, which is called Nina Balatka. The second is called Linda Tressel. I had never heard of either of them. These were written in 1867 and 68, respectively. And they are atypical Trollope novels. It says they're unusual because Trollope concealed his authorship, publishing both anonymously and setting them abroad. So Nina Balatka is set in Prague, and Nuremberg is the setting for Linda Tressel, I believe, although I haven't got that far yet. And thirdly, I am reading this, Ryszard Kapucinski, The Soccer Wars. Ryszard Kapucinski was a Polish foreign correspondent. He was responsible for 50 countries in the world for a Polish news agency. That's a lot of the world to cover. He was appointed in 1964 and was the Polish press agency's only foreign correspondent. He befriended Che Guevara, Salvador Allende, Patrice Lumumba. The titular story in this, The Soccer War, is about a war, well, fighting at least, that broke out between Honduras and El Salvador following a football match that was a qualifier for the World Cup. And this was in The match was in 1969 and they were trying to qualify for the 1970 World Cup. He is a really good writer. I have a couple of his other books as well. But like I say, I am reading this as reportage for Historathon Q4. The final thing I have started is this. A Tomb with a View by Peter Ross. Peter Ross is a Scottish journalist and has a fascination with churches. I've got another of his books that I haven't read called Steeplechasing. This one is Stories and Glories of Graveyards is the subheading, and it just seemed an appropriate October read, really. Not very far in. I've just gone through the prologue and midway through the first chapter, but he writes beautifully, and he is, I think he's a former George Orwell Prize winner, but very respected journalist, and I'm looking forward to getting further into that. So that's it from me for this week. I am now packing up the car and heading down south, where I absolutely cannot wait to see both of my grandchildren. These are children of daughter number 1. Daughter number 2 is due to give birth in 2 weeks' time. So, anytime, really. Thank you for stopping by. I'm not sure I'm going to get a lot done this week. I'm certainly not going to be doing anything while I'm spending time with the family. But I'll catch up when I get back. It's always lovely to see you. I hope you have a wonderful reading week. Let me know what you're reading, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye for now.